Will is your average wannabe hero working hard to become a mage despite having zero talent. His life changes when a beautiful girl offers to marry him if he manages to gain top rank. After that, Will started fighting countless monsters in dungeon and eventually gained some unique skills and superhuman strength. However, before any of this, Regarden Magical Academy is the prestigious institute where individuals only care about magical talents. However, Will Surfort believes that someone who is not capable of using magic has to go to dungeons to slay monsters in order to succeed and be recognized in the academy. Will enters the dungeon and suddenly can be seen fighting a deadly monster. The monster attacks Will with magic, but Will dodges it and swiftly slices through the monster. Turns out, Will also doesn't have any magical powers and goes on to slay more monsters in front of him. During a lecture, a group of students is attentively listening when Professor Edward Surfant suddenly calls on Will to come to the front and perform a demonstration. Edward insists that the task is simple and can be done by anyone. Unfortunately, Will struggles and fails, causing the entire class to burst into laughter. However, one girl remains silent and doesn't join the mocking. Edward glares at Will with disdain and sarcastically remarks that he can't believe their academy has a student like him. Just then, a red-haired student named Sion Ulster stands up at the back of the class and casts a powerful fire spell, successfully completing the demonstration that Will couldn't. Despite Sion's successful display, Edward scolds him for acting without permission and emphasizes the importance of control and magic. Edward then turns his attention back to Will, declaring that magic is a supreme art and implying that Will's failure shows he doesn't belong at the academy. He harshly suggests that Will should leave immediately, making it clear that there is no place for someone of his skill level at the academy. The incident leaves Will humiliated while the rest of the class laughs at him. After the class, Sion finds Will in the hallways and goes on to make fun of him until Colette comes running and tells Sion to stop making fun of her friend Will. Colette goes on to say that Will is much kinder and harder worker than anyone in the academy. However, Sion just laughs at it, saying that being kind and hard worker does not make a great mage, and leaves. As Will and Colette walk, Colette shows her concern about how everyone in the class and Professor Edward humiliates him. However, Will reveals that he does not care since he can't really control his magical power. He then tells that he is lucky to have such a cute girl to worry about him. Colette suddenly blushes and tells him to not riz any girl like this out of embarrassment. As she calms her racing heart down, she notices Will spaced out. Upon asking, Will tells her that the sky looks beautiful, and Colette agrees. Long ago, the people used to live in darkness as they were afraid of celestial hosts. However, one day 5 wizards stood up against them and drove back the invaders, who sealed up the sky and brought back peace to the world. From that day onwards, Mage Vander became the highest title passed down through ages, and there wasn't any mage born who never dreamt of being one. Colette asks Will if he thinks the Ice Maiden Albus Elfaria is watching them, to which he replies that he does believe she is watching them from her window. A few years ago, Will was often seen playing with a girl. One day, the girl shared a story with him about how she once saw the sun and moon in the sky together, with a beautiful sunset beside them. She explained to Will that when someone becomes a Mage Vander, they get to stand on top of a tall building to watch the sunset. Inspired by this, Will promised the girl that they would watch the sunset together someday. However, this promise was just a childish dream. The girl had a special talent and had already become the youngest Mage Vander, climbing to the top of the tower. Meanwhile, Will believed he was just an ordinary boy and was living in a fantasy, thinking he could one day stand beside her. Despite his dreams, he felt far from achieving the same success as the girl. Meanwhile, Will is getting scolded by the Professor Werkner Norgram for going to a dungeon alone by himself. The professor seems to be worried about him. Will apologizes and asks will he get the credits, but the professor looks even more pissed. However, Werkner says that he defeated the evil guard, so he awards 2 credits. Listening to this, Will and his familiar are both happy. Suddenly, Werkner asks about his persistent dream of becoming Mage Vander. Werkner goes on to say that in order to become one he has to excel at every subject in order to get enough credit, because from only his subject it's practically impossible. Furthermore, Professor Werkner believes that he can't even graduate since he can't use magic. Will starts to look into his notebook when suddenly Professor Werkner reveals info about a monster that appeared on the 6th floor. Listening to this, Will suddenly hugs him with joy. Little did they know, Sion was eavesdropping on their conversation and rushed with a plan to get rid of Will. Later in the evening, Will is walking through the dungeon excited to get his 4 points. Will has fought Baskerville, but his familiar is not that excited because the last time he got burned. However, Will tells him to not worry and stay beside him. Meanwhile, Sion is also in the dungeon with his buddies. The trio plans to take out the monster. Before he does so, Will gets no credits and gets expelled. One of Sion's friends raises a question if it's okay to go to the 6th floor by themselves, which angers Sion, but they decide to keep going. Suddenly, one of Sion's friends is thrown through the air, revealing that Baskerville has found them before they could find him. Meanwhile, Will hears a scream and runs toward it. When he arrives, he sees Sion on the ground, terrified. Sion's fire attacks are too weak to hurt the monster. Will is about to help when he suddenly remembers all the times Sion bullied him. He hesitates, thinking about what to do. Just then a burst of magic reveals a flashback. Will gets a vision of his childhood friend, Elfaria Albus, giving him a pair of goggles. He remembers her kind and brave words. Without thinking twice, he rushes in and counters the monster's attack, saving Sion. Back at the academy, Professor Edward goes to Werkner and tells him that Sion and his friends have gone to the dungeon's 6th floor and need to be rescued. However, when Werkner hears they are on the 6th floor, he says they will be okay because Will is with them. While Will and the monster are fighting, Will manages to dodge the monster's sharp moves and cleverly circles around to slice its finger with one quick move. The monster gets even more furious and lunges at Will again, but he leaps out of harm's way just in time. Seizing the moment, the monster strikes while Will is midair. Surprisingly, Will turns the tables by using the attack to create some space between them. The monster then grabs some rubble and hurls it at Will. Luckily, Will slices through the debris and swiftly strikes the monster from behind. Meanwhile, Sion is amazed to see the same person he thought was a loser saving him from danger. Meanwhile at the academy, Edward is also surprised to see Will fighting a monster like this. Werkner tells him that even though Will does not have any magic, he has super strength and speed beyond any mage. Moreover, he has hardiness of a dwarf with observational skill to memorize any attack pattern after seeing them once. As Will gets to see through the attacks of the monster, he easily defends and slashes the monster arm. As the monster throws a freaking laser at him, Will stops the attack with the massive sword and slices the monster in half and goes on to help Sion, who seems a bit angry. Meanwhile at the academy, Professor Edward is in disbelief that someone without magic can surpass the magic itself and leaves. The following morning, Werkner is pissed at Will but goes on to give 10 credits to him. Later, Will is seen along with Albus, who is smiling at him. What'll be the fate of Will in this cruel world favoring only mages? Comment your thoughts below and subscribe to the channel for more. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.